Tell me when you're ready.
So we are now recording, and everyone from the lobby is admitted into the meeting.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to this public meeting of the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel. My name is Peter Biscoe, and I'm the chair of the panel. Just interrupt what I'm saying. There seems to be some people speaking in the background.
I don't know how they do these shit. You can't even understand them.
There's some people speaking in the background. Can they be music?
Yes, there are. By the name of Mastriani Luca, it seems like that person is not muted.
I've muted it now, so it's all good.
Okay, thank you. I just repeat what I was saying. Welcome to this public meeting of the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel. My name is Peter Biscoe and I'm the chair of the panel. And sitting with me on the panel today are Marjorie Ferguson and Marcia Doherty, who are both experts, and Lloyd Graham, a community representative. There are three matters, I should say, listed for the public meeting, and one matter for the non-public meeting item, which I'll come to in a minute. In the meantime, I note that there have been declarations of interest signed by all members of the panel, and no conflicts of interest are disclosed. The panel acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands on which we gather and pays respects to their elders, past and present. I note that the minutes of the panel held on the 15th of November 2023 were adopted by the chair and have been posted on the council's website. The four matters to which I referred are as follows on the agenda. Item 4.1 concerns 1 Blue Gum Crescent Frenchs Forest. It's a development application 2023/0285 for demolition works and construction of a residential flat building, basement car parking, including strata subdivision. Then there is item 4.2 concerning 23 Ashburner Street, Manly, for demolition works and construction of a dwelling house, including a swimming pool, and that is DA 2022/1950. And the final public meeting item is item 4.3 on the agenda concerning 79 Ashworth Avenue, Belrose, a development application 2023/0067 for demolition works and subdivision of one lot into two lots. I mentioned that there was a non-public meeting item. That is item 5.1 on the agenda, relating to 1/63-67 the Corso Manly for alterations and additions to a commercial premise, and that is DA 2023/0849. The procedure will be that the panel will proceed shortly to hear the registered speakers in relation to each of the matters that are listed for the public meeting. The panel will then retire into closed session to consider those matters, and also the matter that I referred to, which is a non-public meeting item. It's usual for the panel to reach a decision with reasons on the same day, and for the minutes of the panel meeting, recording those decisions and reasons to be posted on the council website within a day. As regards the registered speakers, the normal time allowed for speakers to address the panel is 3 minutes, which may be extended if application is made to the chair for extension. All written submissions have been briefed to the panel, so it's unnecessary to read them again. It's unnecessary to repeat what some other speaker may have already said with which you agree. It's sufficient to say that you agree, and the panel would appreciate it if you are succinct. So we'll proceed now to address the first item to which I referred, 4.1, concerning 1 Blue Gum Crescent, Frenchs Forest, DA 2023/0285. One objector has registered to speak, that is Mr. Gary Ruddy of 7 Blue Gum Crescent, Frenchs Forest. I note also that for the applicant and representatives of the applicant who are available for questions, there is the planner Jeff Mead of Planning Ingenuity, the architect Matt Clark of Can Finch, and in relation to landscape, Rod Frew of Concept, and the applicant Marco Navati. Mr. Ruddy, would you like to address the panel?
Yes, thanks for giving me the opportunity to address. I have submitted a letter in response as well, so I won't go through every one of the details. But just to open up with, I'd like to just discuss the rezoning entirely of the Frenchs Forest area. I mean, particularly in relation to Blue Gum and Gladys, these are both landlocked streets that will have to navigate through the proposed town centre. And the rezoning that has been applied to those two streets effectively cuts our neighbourhood into two sections. And I note that when the planning was originally displayed to the public, that there was a 5-metre buffer zone promised between the two zones, which seems to have disappeared. And so that's just in general, I wanted to point out that the planning itself, to me, seems haphazard and not considering the actual residents or the geography itself. So in relation to the matter at the moment, my properties are R2 low density zone resident, and they're proposing to put a significant building next to me, which planning restrictions are 13 meters, but they're looking to go to 15.75 meters, which is effectively an additional floor above the floor that was planned. The reasons that they are doing this is that they're stepped down in the geography, which obviously my land also steps down in geography, and any submission that I would make would actually require me to step down in that geography, the same as what they should be expected to do. I understand that it's an easy thing to actually fix this from advice from an architect, but that's I refer you to a submission from Bill Tulloch on that, because it's beyond my technical capabilities. So effectively, there's going to be a building 21% larger than it should be, right next to my property, and the report currently says that this is no effect on my building, which is obviously incorrect, and I don't see how they could actually come to that conclusion. Also, there is design guidelines that say that there should be a 3-meter separation between the development and R2 residential property, and the reasons that in the report are given that is not there or does not matter is because I only have 4 windows on the side of my building, which is incorrect, because we do have a sunroom which actually reaches out over the west and has a southern boundary, which is a 3-meter glazed wall as well, which this development will look directly into. And not only that, my entire backyard will be exposed to these flats. And the report itself says that there are a number of balconies and windows that are going to overlook and will basically invade my privacy. So that in mind, what I'm asking the council to do, and also that these non-conformances will actually set a precedent for the entire development in the area by the very fact that this is the first major development on Frenchs Forest Road. So the report said it doesn't set a precedent, but obviously it does. It is the first development, and therefore by default sets a precedent. So I'm asking the panel to refuse the DA as it stands at the moment, and even in fact review the entire the way that the rezoning has been set out, particularly for Blue Gum Crescent and for Gladys, because those properties are directly affected by that. So please refuse as it stands until it's been reviewed and made a relevant size and relevant setbacks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ruddy. Does the panel have any questions of Mr. Ruddy?
No.
Mr. Ruddy, not directly with the issue, because I understand the issue, but several years ago, when there was discussion about this general area, residents were quite elated at the prospect of redevelopment and perhaps the amalgamation of individual sites that would be attractive to developers. Has that sort of thing continued, or has it just fallen away?
It's pretty much fallen away now. Only those people that are in rezoned areas, which is effectively an arbitrary three property boundary that somebody in an office somewhere has drawn along the line, that all three properties across the entire boundary of the road will be rezoned. And so only those people in the rezoned areas are being amalgamated, and they have amalgamated their properties pretty much along the entire boundary. But in terms of properties outside of that, at this point in time, there is no continued discussion about that. Though I do think that would be of interest, but there is none going on at the moment.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ruddy, in relation to your submissions concerning privacy and overlooking and the sunroom, have you considered condition 27, which is designed to minimise privacy and overlooking? It's set out at the back of the assessment report. Have you considered that and whether it would be adequate in your view?
So I think that's I'm not sure. I don't know it specifically in front of me, but I think that's the height of the balconies and the setback of the top floor. Is that correct?
No,
or not?
no, it's concerned with the incorporation in the apartments shown on the plans as A105 and A205 for external full height louver privacy screens covering a minimum of half the glazing width, external louver privacy screens covering the full width of the glazing up to a minimum height of 1.5 metres above the FFL, or frosted translucent glazing up to a minimum height of 1.5 metres above the FFL. And there's a provision for any privacy screening to be fixed and angled towards the northeast with a minimum spacing of 100 millimetres and so on. I just wondered whether you'd had an opportunity to have a look at that.
I mean, I haven't specifically looked at that, and obviously you'd have to look at how the vectors of the views would work to see whether it overlook my property. But the fact is that this is a 16 metre property overlooking directly my back garden, and my back garden is to the northeast of this property, of this development. So it's going to be overlooking directly, even with those requirements in there. It will be overlooking my backyard. I can't develop my property as they suggest, we're taking into account that it is a north aspect, because for myself to develop my property, I have to go out to the same slope that they're going out, and to do that with a single residential property, it's just not financially viable to do that. I can't do that. It's the costs. I've had people in to look at doing that. The cost of doing that are significant in a single residential property. So I'm not able to develop my property to back onto their property and avoid the privacy issues. So my garden will always be exposed to all of those north-facing apartments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ruddy. Then, there being no further questions from the panel, I note that the applicant and representatives of the applicant are available for questions, and I've identified who they are earlier. Does the panel have any questions of the applicant or representatives of the applicant?
Yes, I just wanted to ask about the weekly rubbish collection. I raised that because I like to know what the solution to that is, because this particular property is right on the traffic lights, and I would expect that to undertake that would take, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and with verges on both sides of the carriageway. I just want to know exactly how it's going to be handled.
Thank you, Chair and panel. Jeff Mead, Consultant Planner for the applicant.
Number 2.
Number one.
Sorry, there's background noise there. In terms of the waste management, on the ground floor plan, there's the identification there of two things, being the bin holding area, which is within the development site, and on the street there's a proposed waste collection loading zone, which is immediately to the east of the bin holding area. So essentially the waste collection does not happen on Frenchs Forest Road. It happens on Blue Gum Crescent, and it happens, you can see there's an indent there on the road reserve that will allow for a collection. So the bins will effectively be moved on bin day from the holding area up to that point to allow for the collection.
Right, and that's a sufficient width to accommodate the trucks. Is that correct?
Yes, so that's been designed in accordance with council's waste officers and engineering officers. So yes, it has been considered by council, and yeah, we understand it to meet all standards, and it's been found to be acceptable. It is something that has been the subject of significant dialogue right from the pre-DA discussions. Waste is always a difficult one to solve, but yeah, we think that it's been solved well here, to the extent that it will allow for the waste truck to not impede access along Blue Gum Crescent during that time that it's loading waste into the truck.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Jeff, you heard the concerns of Mr. Ruddy. Would you like to sort of address the concerns he has in terms of privacy that the application proposes, and perhaps landscaping as well that may be planted?
Yes, I'd be happy to. We acknowledge the comments of the northern neighbour. As was rightly put, there is a zone boundary between the subject site and Mr. Ruddy's property, and so of course there's different controls that apply on either side of that boundary. The planning controls, importantly, under the DCP, deal with that transition in a very specific way. Under the DCP, there's a building envelope control that essentially sets an inclined plane above a 2-story height. So essentially there's from 2 stories, there's a 45-degree inclined plane, and the idea of that is to transition built form back from that zone boundary. So you can see in the plan set effectively what that translates to. Sorry, there's still background noise there. It's a bit distracting.
There's a few people with their microphones on.
Yes, Heidi, can anything be done about this? I see there is somebody has been speaking in the background. It's been interrupting Mr. Mead.
I think it's Mr. Mastroianni.
Yes, that's correct. If everyone could just put themselves on mute, except for Mr. Mead, who's addressing the panel.
Thank you. So, as I was saying, what that control translates to in built form is the lower 2 levels are set back 6 metres from that common boundary, and then the upper residential level is set back 10.6 metres, so an additional 4.6 metres to the glass line on that level to fit within that inclined plane. In terms of those conditions that have been recommended by council staff for privacy screening, we agree with those conditions and accept those conditions, and share the view that that will significantly improve the opportunity to mitigate against potential overlooking. At the ground level, of course, we've also got deep soil area within that 6 metre setback to building A along that shared boundary. So the landscape plan through that area includes deep soil planting, which will again assist with the mitigation of privacy impacts. You can see on the northern elevation of building A, which is on sheet 3.01, there's a superimposed on that elevation is landscaping, and that's just done graphically to show the input that landscape planting would have along that facade as well. So we think that the combination of setbacks, that inclines plane of setting in the uppermost level, with the landscaping within that deep soil area, and the added screening as recommended by the condition, that overlooking will be appropriately managed at that zone interface.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions in relation to this matter? No. All right. Well, thank you to all the speakers for their assistance and for the succinct way in which they put their points. The panel will now move on to the next item on the agenda, 4.2, 23 Ashburn Street, Manly, demolition works, construction of a dwelling house, including the swimming pool. This is DA 2022/1950. There are, in fact, no objectors nor anyone, including the applicant, registered to speak. So unless there's some change in those circumstances, we can move on to item 4.3. Item 4.3 concerns 79 Ashworth Avenue, Belrose, demolition works and subdivision of one lot into two lots. This is DA 2023/0067. No objector is registered to speak. The only person registered to speak is on behalf of the applicant, Sam Down, or Town Planning Consultant. Now, Mr. Down, would you like to address the panel?
Yes, thank you. Okay, let's start my timer. So Council Approval Group has responded to the concerns raised by the council staff throughout the assessment process and has provided extensive supporting documentation to demonstrate the merits of the application before you. The application includes a draft deposited plan that includes building envelopes that restrict the footprint of the future dwellings. These have been informed by a conceptual drawing and compliance assessments. We have actively listened to council staff in formulating the building envelopes to achieve an outcome that provide additional housing supply whilst not undermining the character of the area. We believe there are sufficient environmental planning grounds to support the variation to the minimum lot size, and these have been documented in the clause 4.6 variation request. The proposal will not set an undesirable precedent and undermine the future character of the area. Notwithstanding the reduced lot size, the proposed subdivision layout is consistent with the existing subdivision pattern for lots immediately west of the site. This is identified in Figure 10 and Figure 11 of the clause 4.6 variation request. The imposition of building envelopes by way of a Section 88B instrument would, in the circumstances of this case, set a desirable precedent. As acknowledged in the assessment report, the visual impact of the dwelling on Lot 2, being the one behind, will be limited, with the dwelling screened from the street by the front house. The driveways have also been consolidated into one, maximising landscape within the front setback. The assessment report acknowledges that the average lot size for the 18 closest lots is 842 square metres and ranges from 600 to 1,200 square metres. Taking this into consideration, the proposed lots provide for greater diversity whilst also maintaining the amenity for surrounding residents. Our internal research has also identified several examples where approval has been granted for similar variations to the 600 square metre minimum lot size standard. The assessment report states that the subdivision has not demonstrated that the land can be developed in full compliance with the applicable development controls for future residential development. However, this statement would appear to contradict Council's DCP assessment found on pages 252 to 256 of the report. My interpretation of Council's assessment is that future dwellings can meet or are superior to that required by the DCP. Council's report demonstrates a high level of compliance with DCP can be achieved, and where a variation is proposed, this appears to be supported on merit reading through the report. In making your decision, I would encourage the panel to consider this assessment in detail. On a final note regarding stormwater, a stormwater management plan was provided with the application, substantiating that the stormwater evidence substantiating that the stormwater infrastructure
identified in the plans is in place was provided to council, however, could not be considered due to timing. These investigations that have been undertaken by a licensed plumber demonstrate that there is a lawful point of discharge for each lot. Whilst we recognise that the engineering matters need to be resolved, it is recommended that this be done by way of a deferred commencement consent. Thank you for the opportunity to address the panel. I'll be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Down. Does the panel have any questions?
No.
Mr. Down, you referred us to figures 10 and 11 in your clause 4.6 request, which is at page 283 of the agenda papers. And you did so by suggesting that this was consistent with the existing subdivision pattern. But are any of the lots shown in that figure 10, are any of them less than 600 square metres?
So in response to that question, there are no lots that are less than 600. But what I'm talking about is consistency with the pattern between having one house in front of the other. Mm-hmm. And this effectively continues that pattern down the street on a lot that's capable of accommodating dwellings while still providing a landscape setting.
Okay. But in fact, if we look at your figure 10, there are no lots there shown there which are under 600 square metres, are there?
That is correct. And as I pointed out in my submission, what we found in this locality is that many of the lot sizes are significantly over the 600 square metres. So we're sort of looking at it from a perspective of, on balance, how does this look? So that's where I come from. But I do acknowledge your point. There is no, in that immediate locality, there are no lots under 600 square metres.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Down, for your assistance. There are no other registered speakers, so that concludes this public meeting. As I indicated earlier, the panel will now retire into closed session to consider all the matters, including the non-public meeting item matter, which I identified earlier. It is now 12:27. I'll now terminate this meeting and the panel will resume for their closed session meeting at 12:45. This public meeting is now closed.